Welcome to People Doing Good for Others. Welcome to People Doing Good for Others, where we celebrate and praise and hold in the light those who truly make significant contributions in our communities. I'm Gary York, and I'm grateful to be with you today. We want to thank Wilkes Communications, River Street Productions, and 100.9 WIFM for this sponsorship. Our featured guest today is Ms. Morgan Mathis. She's the Public Information Officer with Wilkes County Schools, having stepped into that role in February. She's a significant leader of the Wilkes County Hall of Fame, works with the superintendent about letting folks know the good things that are happening about Wilkes County Schools. So good morning to you, my friend.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
What an honor to have you here. So. Tell us a little bit about playing sports under your dad and being a teacher and your mom, and just a little bit about family, if you will.
Sure. From Wilkes County, born and raised, specifically the Millers Creek area. I grew up off of Pads Road, so in a really good part of Wilkes County because it's considered in the Millers Creek area, but yet close enough to get to town quickly if you need to.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoyed growing up in the Millers Creek area. Had an older sister by 3 years, and we were pretty close growing up together, and we were very active. We loved being outside as kids growing up. We would play outside from dawn until dusk every day, so no matter the weather. And went to elementary, middle, and high school in Millers Creek. So I went to Millers Creek Elementary School, and I had a grandmother and a great-grandmother that lived very, very close to the school, within a mile. So our childhood, we were very close as a family, and my grandmother lived right across the street from Millers Creek Elementary School. So on beautiful days, she would just walk across the street to pick me and my sister up from school, and and then walk us back to her house. So that was pretty neat growing up. I have some great memories of that. And she lived close to the famous Igloo restaurant.
I know where that is.
And that was a treat for me and my sister to walk over to the Igloo and get a hot dog after school or a milkshake. And I still vouch that they have the best around. So.
Do they? Hot dogs.
Yes, yes. So spent a lot of time as a family growing up in that area, and really enjoyed it.
Sports with your dad?
Yes, played basketball for my dad in high school. Really enjoyed it. I loved having my dad as a coach. I know he was a little tougher on me than a normal coach would be, being his daughter, but I loved basketball. I've played since I was a young girl, so that's some of my greatest memories of high school was playing basketball.
So your mother was a teacher too?
Yes, she was. So I've learned a lot from both of them education-wise. They have, education has been a big part of my life and my family's life.
Okay. And you made the choice to go to UNC Wilmington.
I did.
And tell us a little about that.
I think I'd had enough of the foothills and the mountains and wanted to try the beach for a little while. I've always been a beach girl at heart. I've always loved going to the beach with my family, and went to go visit when I was in high school. I went to visit some friends that were actually from Wilkes County that went to school at UNC Wilmington, and I just fell in love with the campus. It was just so beautiful and spread out, and all the students were outside all the time, just walking barefoot, taking skateboards to class. So I just fell in love with the atmosphere there. I loved every minute that I was there.
Okay. Then you came back to Wilkes?
I did.
And worked for the health department for a while?
Worked for Wilkes Senior Village.
Okay.
As soon as I graduated, I was very blessed. I got a job as soon as I moved back home. And served as the activities director there, and really enjoyed that, and met a lot of people and made a lot of good relationships while I was there, but healthcare just wasn't where I felt that my heart was.
Okay. Well, tell us about getting with the school system.
I got an opportunity at Wilkes County Schools in 2015 as a HR assistant, and loved working in human resources. I worked for Dr. Wood in human resources, and served as the assistant to their department. So anything that our HR specialist or our director needed, I would file HR personnel records. I also processed student transcripts while I was there. And then an opportunity came about in an HR specialist position after I served in that role for a little over a year, and served as HR specialist after that.
So Nicole McNeil?
Yes.
She's also a vital part of that
She
group.
is. She is. I loved working with
She's
Nicole.
does an incredible job of staging, let's see, Teacher of the Year?
Yes.
That's her thing, right?
And I actually got to help her with that while I was in HR also. I loved.
That's a good learning experience.
Yes,
Yes, it was.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of go through how you were able to be the person that in February 1, were there some stops along the way?
Yes, when I worked as an HR specialist for Wilkes County Schools, something that Dr. Wood and Mr. Byrd saw was how much I loved working with people. Some of my favorite parts of working as an HR specialist were new hires. I loved bringing in new hires. The excitement of a new teacher or a new employee, when they get to come in and fill out their paperwork before they can begin their career, and most of them are fresh out of college, and it's such an exciting time, and I love to share that experience with them and help them feel at ease and answer any questions that they had, and that was a big piece that I loved doing when I was in HR, and also helping employees and teachers with retirement. Being there for them, that's a pretty big step for someone when they get to that point, and helping them and just being there for them as they're completing their paperwork and guiding them through that process. A lot of them would open up to you and tell you what their plans were and tell you about their family, and I just really enjoyed that piece working in HR, and that's something that I think Dr. Wood and Mr. Byrd saw in me, was how much I loved building those relationships with the employees. And so Mr. Byrd decided to start giving me some roles as public information officer, just part-time on top of my HR role. And so with that, I was starting to do our district newsletters, which we do monthly.
Newsletter.
Okay. And started taking on some roles with social media, with our social media school district pages on Facebook and Twitter. And I loved it. I just didn't have the time, unfortunately, to devote to it all the time. And so as I got more and more in depth into the PIO duties, I think Mr. Byrd saw a need for it full time. And so Dennis Huggins announced that he was going to retire in February. And Mr. Byrd approached me and said, I think that this is something that we can do full time once Dennis retires, and you can take on some of his roles. And I said, oh, that sounds fabulous. I would love that. And
so things just kind of transpired as you would like them to be.
Yes, yes.
Wow. Morgan Mathis, tell us about your husband.
He is a farmer and family business owner. He and his brother and cousin and uncle and father, there's 5 of them totaled, 5 men. They are owners of ASJ Mathis Farms. So they farm mostly corn crop, and they have poultry houses, and they also do some trucking through Tyson that they do as kind of a contract basis.
Okay. Where'd you meet?
We met through a mutual friend. When I moved back to Wilkes, as soon as I graduated, I had a friend in Wilkes, and it was I graduated in December, and in January he said, let's go skiing. And I had actually never been skiing. And that sounds crazy living so close to the mountains, but I had never been skiing, and I said, let's do it, let's try it. And so my friend brought Jordan along. And something that stuck out to me the most was what a gentleman he was when I first met
Jordan.
him.
How about that?
He was he was in the passenger seat of the car, and I met them on the way up the mountain, and he got out of the front seat and got in the back seat so I could sit up front. And I thought, this is a nice guy.
Good for you.
And so we went skiing and had a great time and just sort of started hanging out together after that, and the rest is history.
All right, tell us about Dennis's influence and his willingness to help you those last few months, and if you will.
Dennis has been a huge mentor to me and continues to be a mentor for me even after he's retired. I can't imagine another employee giving me such good notes that he gave me, and just how much time he spent with me before he retired, and just never acts like it's a bother at all. And even since he's retired, especially with the Hall of Fame, those weeks leading up to it, he would call and check on me and just say, hey, have you thought of this? Have you thought of this? And he's just been phenomenal. I could not ask for a better person to have trained with me, and I owe much of the success of the Hall of Fame for him.
And you are also a meticulous planner.
Yes.
Tell us about that skill. How did you come by that? How important that is?
I live, eat, breathe by my planner. If it's not in my planner, I'm not going to remember to do it. So I try to put as much information and details into planning and in my calendar as much as I can. And as long as I have that by my side, I'm going to remember and be on time and have everything the way I need it to be. But it's definitely necessary in my job, for sure.
You also shared with me that you loved school.
I did. I loved school growing up.
Just tell us a little bit about that, if you will.
It's interesting for me today. I was actually the first 7th grade class at West Wilkes Middle when the new middle schools were built.
Yeah. And
it's so funny to go in the buildings today because they're so beautiful and colorful, and all the walls are painted. And being the first student group to attend those schools when they were brand new, you know, if you put a handprint on the wall, you'd get in big trouble. So it was very interesting to say that I was part of that group, because that was a pretty big deal at that age, to know that you're getting ready to go to a school with students from 2 other schools. It was 3 schools that were all in the West District back then. That was when Union Elementary School was still in the West District. And so it was a little intimidating to know that you were going to go to school with that many more students that you'd never met before.
Right.
And you might be stuck in a class with no one from the elementary school that you grew up with. And
wow.
But I loved it. Once I got in and I met new friends, and I feel like it made the transition to high school a little easier. Once you've already met all of those folks and you just go on to the next level together. And I was very involved in high school. I loved high school. I served on student council every year that I was in high school. I played lots of sports. I played soccer, basketball, dance team.
Dance team.
I was on the dance team, yes. So it's difficult at that age to juggle that many things and academics on top of that. And so, but I loved it. And my dad had worked at West High before he retired, he had 30 years just at West Wilkes High School. And so.
Talk about his name, your mom's name, before we go forward, if you will.
My mom is Tanya Beck.
Tanya.
And she has worked as an educator for over 25 years now. And my dad, Coach David Beck, a lot of people know him as Coach Beck. It's funny because when I first went to West Wilkes High School, I wasn't known as Morgan Beck. I was known as Coach Beck's daughter. People knew me as Coach Beck's daughter. But a lot of folks, especially around my age, when they think of West Wilkes High School, my dad comes to mind because he was there for so long, and he was involved in everything. He wasn't just a coach, but he also taught PE and weightlifting for all the other athletes, and he was in charge of painting the football fields, baseball fields, and he'd take the classes out there with him and they'd help him. And he also taught a modern dance class. And
your dad did?
He did, and he loved it. He would get out there and start shaking, and the students loved it. They loved
Modern dance.
Modern dance. It was basically line dancing to country songs, and he loved it.
Oh, thank you.
And some of the students that I went to school with, some of their best memories, they say, is of them dancing with him in class. And
Oh,
So
my word.
a lot of people, when they think of West Wilkes, I think a lot of them think of my dad because he was such a key person at the school. He was there all the
Icon.
time. Yes.
Icon.
And my sister and I, basically, that was our second home growing up. I mean, even before we were in school there, we were always there with him, helping him and practicing sports there. And so I felt like West High was my second home. So I loved it.
Good. Morgan Mathis, now let's go to your career now. What does a public information officer do?
I basically serve as the primary media liaison for all of our school district communications. So what that entails is I'm in charge of our social media accounts for our entire school district.
Stop right there a minute. Social media, is that something you learn in college? They have courses in social media in college.
They may now, but not when I was in college.
So you self-taught?
Yes.
Wow. Well, go ahead.
Okay. So I manage our social media accounts for our whole school district,
And
which is
how many do we have? Or
right now we have Facebook and Twitter.
okay.
May change as social media changes in the next few years, but right now we feel that those two are the main two that we use. And I also am in charge of continuing those district newsletters that I started to do when I was in HR.
Right.
And those are published monthly. We put those on our district website and share those on our Facebook page. And that just showcases all of our good news that's going on in our school district. So whether that be awards for teachers or awards for students or any kind of good news that we would like to recognize anybody in our school district for, we put in those newsletters.
So we also could ask for help with our audience today. If there's something good happening, we want to know about it.
Yes.
And get in touch with you.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
So call you at 667-1121.
That's right.
Okay. All right, back to what you do.
In addition to that, I also write press releases for any good news events that we have going on in our schools, and then I distribute those to local media to get the word out about anything that we feel is necessary to share with the community, whether that's good news or awards or anything to that effect that we think is great for Wilkes County schools. And I also call in a weekly radio announcement at WIFM Radio.
Good.
And we also showcase good news and recognize students for certain achievements on those weekly radio announcements as well.
Did you, sometime after, would you go to Wilmington? That was a choice. Were there other places you thought about?
There were, and I had thought about applying other places, but for some reason Wilmington just captured my
One
heart.
visit, and that's
That's
where
all
you
it
wanted
took.
to be. Okay. This call-in for what you do, for this public information, is that something that just kind of started to build, or did you, could you see it when you came on board?
I definitely didn't see it when I came on board. I think as I have gotten more so into my career, I think I've realized strengths that I didn't realize I had before. My creative
Wow.
side. And I think that's why it's so neat how it's kind of all fell into place since I started with Wilkes County Schools. Developing those relationships and human resources with those employees, which led to developing relationships now with the community. I think it's just all kind of fell into place the way that it should.
You were with employees the first day, right? And so you spend most of the day with all that paperwork.
Yes.
So you played a real vital role in that first day experience is
Yes.
really important. Okay. Did we finish, just finish the responsibilities, if you will, of a public information officer?
Okay. In addition, I also am in charge of our school messenger call tree, which is the phone system that goes out to all of our students and our staff in our school district. And so anytime we have a district-wide event that we need to notify parents and teachers and staff
Is that where
about.
the weather is too?
Yes, yes.
School closing?
Yes, correct. I currently don't do those. Mr. Bird still does those for inclement weather, but anything that we need to go out that's informative to students and their parents, I also send out if it's district-wide.
Okay. All right, let's move over to being a writer. And we talked about Jim Brooks, and just tell us about refining those skills that you had, that you love to write. Let's just talk about that for a little bit.
Sure. I really developed a love of writing in high school, and I feel that a lot of my teachers that I had at West Wilkes High School really helped with that. Dr. Brooks, I had my senior year, and Miss Rachel Hughes, I had my sophomore and junior year. And the more that I got into those English courses.
Was that an English class?
Yes.
Her name again?
Rachel Hughes.
Rachel Hughes, all right.
She was at West Wilkes back then when I was there. And I guess it's kind of, I didn't realize I had the strengths in writing that I thought I had until I got into those courses. And my sophomore year that I was in high school, I actually was one of 4 students in Wilkes County schools that made a perfect score on their writing test.
You did?
I did, and so we were recognized. It was a pretty big deal, and looking back now, you know, it's pretty neat to be able to say that I was one of those students. But I credit a lot of my success to, you know, my teachers that I had there, and you know, my mother has also been very good at writing, with her being a teacher and an educator, and specifically in English. She teaches English as a second language. And so anytime I ever needed help with writing, she was always there to help me with my grammar and things like that. And so.
And she's edits for you today?
She does. She does. She's a big help to me. If I ever have a press release or something at the last minute, I'll email it to her, and she'll say, yeah, I'll read over that for you tonight before I go to bed. And she always does for me.
Wow. Well, that's wonderful.
Yes.
Having somebody that
second set of eyes helps.
Second set of eyes.
Yes.
Oh. Now, I want to go back to Dr. Brooks and the role that he plays at West Wilkes. I met him early on, probably 10 years ago, and you know, he's been National Teacher of the Year. You said some really nice things about him yesterday. Tell us about as a person, the character and the Jim Brooks that we know.
I loved having Dr. Brooks as a teacher when I was at West Wilkes, and I can't think of any students that didn't like Dr. Brooks, having him as a teacher. He treated you like an adult, which I feel is very important to a high school student, because you're about to be in the real world, especially as a senior in high school.
Treated you as an adult?
Yes.
Wow.
And you know, he was that type of teacher. He lets you learn at your own pace. He was there if you needed help, but he put everything in your ballpark. So it was up to you to, you know, take advantage of your own learning, and learned a lot from him. He was a great teacher.
So it sounds like he's a great delegator.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And would be there to a sounding board, but have at it, right?
Yes.
Okay. What now what does he teach? All English, or?
I believe so.
Okay. Okay. Now it's time for us to talk about the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
And so as you came in February, you had February, March, and April, and most of May. Let's let folks know what's involved in the Hall of Fame.
The Hall of Fame is definitely a very big and important event. Even though it's a big and important event, it's very fun. I really enjoyed the whole planning process of our Hall of Fame Gala. There's a lot of planning, and there's a lot of...
Who helps you?
We have a committee.
At in the office,
Yes,
central office?
we have, well, it's our Hall of Fame governing board. We have specific committees out of our governing board, and we have an actual gala committee. And that is comprised of Tammy Love, Ricky Barger, Shayna Williams, Marty Hemrick, and myself. And they were key players in our gala. I could not have done it without them. I could not have asked for a better group to be on that committee. We worked so well together. We met monthly, if not more so than that, starting in February, to go over, I mean, we came to the very, very finest of the details. We wanted to make sure that, you know, it's a very special night for these inductees, and we want them to feel that way. And so, you know, we worked very, very hard together and communicated every week if we didn't meet. And they were just key players in the whole process.
The selection committee, were you there that day?
I was not. I had our T3LC youth leadership group was at the office that day.
Well,
so
you
I got
have that responsibility too?
I do.
Wow.
I do.
That's an important part of life too.
It is.
Oh my goodness.
It is. Those students amaze me.
Yeah.
At their leadership skills, and to see, I wish we would have had that organization in place when I was in school.
Yeah.
The skills that they learn from being in, you know, in those groups, it's just mind-blowing.
Time, talent, and treasures, right?
Yes.
Wow.
Leading to change.
Leading to change. The Leonard Heron family responsible for the financial part of that,
Yes.
and we're grateful that they do that.
Yes,
So,
and the Chamber of Commerce also helps with
so
that.
let's go back to kind of getting down to that last week or some other, let's talk about those key things about the Wilkes Hall of Fame that I think are just so unique. So go through that, if you will.
So our gala committee, the weeks leading up to, I'd say probably about two to 1 week out from the gala, we are ensuring that our inductees are bringing all of their artifacts to put in our Hall of Fame display case, which to me is a very fun piece of that process. You know, the family members get to bring very important items to the inductees, and some of those items, you know, may be from their childhood.
Yeah.
Or it may be from recent just pictures of their families.
Right.
And you get to meet the inductees and their families on another level then. And our committee comes and helps put the artifacts in the display case and with the inductees and their families to make sure everything is the way that they want it to be. And that's a very special time for the inductees. I think that's the first realization to them that, wow, this is really happening. My stuff is in that case. And so that was a very special piece. And we put the items in the display case the week before the event. So that's one of the last pieces that we do because we want it to be showcased for the first time in front of everyone the night of the gala. And it's neat to see the reactions of our guests when they're there that night and to look at each slot of all of our inductees to see all of the items that they have. For example, one of our inductees this year, John Bentley, he served in the Army with Elvis Presley.
Really?
And so one of his artifacts is a book about Elvis Presley being in the Army. And so you don't realize that they served together until you see that. And then you start asking questions. And so you learn so much about the inductees by seeing those items. And that's a really neat thing.
And then we have table sponsorships that raises over $20,000 of money that goes back into the grants for the school system.
Yes.
Right.
All of the money that we make from the gala, we give back to Wilkes County schools.
Right.
That's a really important piece of the Hall of Fame, and that's a piece that we really want the community to know that that's where that money is going. We want to give back. We want it to go into the students because we want the students to see that this could be you.
Yeah. Morgan Mathis, we're close to the end, and this has been a wonderful experience, and I'm so glad that you're willing to work with us here at Wilkes Communications and River Street, WIFM, and if you will, just give us a little statement about gratitude for how your wonderful career and the contributions you make. And will you do that for me?
I am very thankful to Wilkes County Schools for giving me the opportunity to serve as that public relations person with our community. I feel that that's very important to make that relationship because, you know, our school system serves our entire community. And we have a lot of people in the community that give to our schools and fund programs that otherwise we would not be able to fund. We wouldn't be able to do with our students. And
find people doing good things and let folks know about it.
yes.
Right?
Yes.
Well, thank you for being here. You've been a wonderful guest, and
Thank
I've
you.
learned a lot from you. Morgan Mathis, the Public Information Director of Wilkes County Schools, a wonderful advocate for our community and doing good for others. And thank you for being with us today. And again, thanks to Wilkes Communications and River Street Networks. And promise that you'll be back again with us next week. I'm Gary York, and this is People Doing Good for Others. And thank you again, my friend.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.